Hello, today we will be talking about the effect of exercise intensity on strength development. Exercise intensity is one of many factors that can affect strength development. So you may be wondering, what is exercise intensity? Exercise intensity relates to the effort of a level of a load being lifted, and it's often related to a 1 rep max, although it can be based off of a 3 or 5 rep max. Generally, higher intensities require reduced volume, while lower intensities can accommodate higher volume. The three methods of programming intensity that we'll be talking about are linear periodization, weakly undulating periodization, and block periodization. Some may wonder if athletes require different levels of intensity. Different athletes may require different levels of intensity. For example, some may respond better to lower intensity exercise, some may respond better to high intensity exercise. Linear periodization works by prescribing a lighter intensity at the beginning of a program and progressing it to a higher intensity as training goes on. This method works well for beginner lifters and is quite simple. The key takeaway from linear periodization is that a majority of the training is done at a moderate to low intensity, and as you get closer to peaking, the intensity will increase while the volume decreases. This is an important factor in strength development, and we will see this trend continue throughout the other methods of periodization as well. Weakly undulating periodization allows the athlete to lift loads at various intensities throughout the week. This allows greater variability in training and allows the lifter to be exposed to both heavy and light weights. The benefit to this is that the athlete can maintain exposure to heavy weights and challenge technique there. On light or moderate days, the athlete can continue to build their base and work on weaknesses. This method is often used as the lifter advances. Block periodization refers to different time frames during a large portion of training. Examples of various types of blocks include hypertrophy, strength, or any attribute that is specifically being trained. Because intensity is often related to the type of block an athlete is in, the athlete may spend great amounts of time lifting submaximally. This method is great for developing specific attributes throughout the different phases of a training year, and because of this, it is often used by a coach training their athletes for a specific event. Now that we know a bit more about the training methods used, we can talk about some of the observations I was able to see. The first thing we can see is that regardless of the form of periodization used, participants were able to make improvements. Specific studies include enhancing muscular qualities in untrained women, linear periodization versus undulating periodization. In this study, we saw that both groups saw improvement. Another study, a comparison of periodization models during 9 weeks with equated volume and intensity for strength, where they observed linear periodization, weakly undulating periodization, and block periodization. They were able to see that all those methods were able to see some form of improvement or similar result. We also see that specific training leads to specific results, and that can be seen in the study effects of light load maximal lifting velocity weight training versus combined weight training and plyometrics on sprint, vertical jump, and strength performance in adult soccer players. This study basically said that explosively trained athletes were going to be more explosive. So there we can see the method of specificity. Another thing we can see is that a majority of studies showed control groups would perform poorly compared to trained groups, and this even included some experiments or tests where indirect training was used, and even those subjects saw improvements over untrained individuals. So the conclusion that I'm drawing from the studies that I've looked at is that weakly undulating periodization seems to be the method that could be the most effective. So now you may be wondering, why weakly undulating periodization? Well, there appear to be a greater amount of benefit to using this method compared to the others. such as high variability, most importantly, being able to train at both high and low intensities. This is important because training at too high an intensity for too long a time can lead to fatigue. And this ties into my second point. Variability or differing stimuli can increase the ability of the athlete to handle different stresses, and it also helps keep the athlete from becoming bored with training. To expand on my point about varying intensity, it's important to note it's not beneficial to train at high intensities all the time, but intermittent exposure can help maintain technique and familiarity at heavier loads. Moderate levels of intensities is where the majority of training is done. This keeps fatigue low to manageable and allows for long-term training goals to be reached. It's important to avoid high intensities for long durations because there's also a greater risk of injury as you train at those levels. So why wouldn't linear periodization fit this model too? Well, it's often used for beginners to intermediate lifters, and these groups see great results. But training progress is not linear, and the results will slow. As experience goes up, training at maximal loads becomes harder. What do I mean by this? With training, most people can achieve beginner to intermediate levels of strength. But as training level increases, the difficulty or the ability to lift those weights becomes harder. This is why you don't see world records being broken every single day, or you don't see people lifting at those intensities very often, because the fatigue and stress accumulated from those lifts is just too high to do for a continued amount of time. And block periodization wouldn't quite fit as far as max strength goes either. It's more suited for sport development, and it can be difficult if the strength block is poorly designed, although it is a good method for developing certain aspects of an athlete at a given time. So what can we take away from all this? Well, we can see that the body adapts to whatever stimuli it is exposed to, and we clearly see this in the experiment I noted earlier about soccer players. When applied to weekly undulating periodization, we see that exposing the body to manageable levels of intense lifting and pairing that with a higher volume of moderate to low intensity lifting can yield the best results for strength. Furthermore, we see that the variability that can be achieved with weekly undulating periodization allows max strength and moderate workloads to be trained at the same time. By keeping the variability high, weekly undulating periodization allows an athlete to recover from high-intensity sessions because they don't occur as often. By keeping fatigue low, the athlete can recover and train longer, therefore seeing greater results over time. Another thing to keep in mind is that all athletes are different, and what works for some may not work for others. Finally, the biggest takeaway we can get is that strength can be gained in many ways. But the one factor that plays the biggest role in acquiring strength is training at higher intensities.